What's cracking, YouTube? It is time for me to dive into a much needed and long overdue upgrade on the old XJ here. I need to get the air conditioning running. When I first got the Jeep, I got it in July. I didn't get it drivable until right around September. I took it on its first inaugural adventure about mid-September. And I thought, I can deal with this. It won't be great sometimes, but the no AC thing's not a big deal. Well, one thing that helped is that at the time I had the vent windows on the front, but they leaked on both sides, so I replaced them with the later model fixed windows. And that has cut down on some of the airflow into the Jeep, and so when it gets hot in the summer, like it is now, it's really not the most comfortable to drive. And so I need to get this solved. This Jeep had the R12 system in it just because it's that old, and that's not really viable anymore. So I need to retrofit this to the R134A system. I've been doing my research of how to do this, primarily so I can do it correctly and safely, of course, and everyone tells you that the two systems are not compatible, so you do need to replace all your major components. So I have collected all those. I've been sitting on them for a year, maybe 2 years, and yeah, I'm not going through another summer without some AC. So I rewatched a couple of things and read some things last night, and one thing before I dive into this and take most of the front end apart, which you have to get to the condenser, I need to make sure that all my new parts, all the fittings and everything go together. So let's start by doing a dry fit of my components. A quick note before I pull all my components out. One reason I've been hesitant is because I had a hard time finding information about how much oil to use, and everything I found said that the oil from the R12 system and the oil from the R134A system, that's your main thing that's not compatible. Those two oils do not play nicely together. And I've been wondering, how do I get the right amount of oil in my system? Well, it dawned on me last night, if I'm replacing all the components, I don't need to worry about there being any R12 oil in the system, because none of those parts are going to still be around. So I'm not even going to worry about that anymore. There's one part that we cannot check, not easily, and that is the evaporator, which I replaced when I replaced the heater core, because since I was there, it just made sense to me to do that. So that in the HVAC box, in the cab, that has already been replaced and is new. So everything remaining to be replaced is all engine bay area stuff. So now let's do the dry fit. So here's the layout of my new components. I've got the condenser on the front. It's the most troublesome to get to and replace. And then a new high and low pressure line, as they are often referred to. And then the evaporator valve. And that's the number of the valve I got. A new receiver dryer. I got the UAC. Get a number on that one. And I'll post all these in the description box as well. On one channel, I saw a gentleman use these valves on top of the compressor. Right angles, they fit nicely under the hood. And easy access to the high and low for filling and maintenance. So those are the two respective numbers. And then, of course, a compressor. This is matched to my model. And then some gaskets, O-rings, and retrofit parts kit. However, these valves here will be replaced by these. So all I really need out of this is the sticker stating that the retrofit procedure has been done. Okay, so getting a lay of the land here, an observation that my old compressor has pretty much the same hookups that the other person used that I got, kind of these right angle ones so that they sit low, except that the new ones have the valves on them on the back for high and low pressure. So that is a maintenance advantage for that upgrade. So I've got my hose that goes from the top of the condenser, which we can't see at the moment, but is this hose here that comes out and connects to the compressor. And then there's one that comes out of the compressor that should go to the valve, which it does. And then we've got one from the valve that goes down to the receiver drier right there. And lastly, there should be one out of the bottom of the receiver drier that I can't see at the moment. And that's the one that I kind of need to figure out and make sure that I've got. So I've got two new lines, which I believe are these two that I replaced. So what I need to check is this one out of the valve that goes to the receiver drier. Maybe that's the other one I have. Oh, and then there needs to be one that returns to the condenser. That's the one. There it is. I see it. It's right down there. Okay, so I am two hoses short, so I need to determine if I can use these old ones or if I need to go get new ones. Alright, I have done some research and this is what I have found out. I have the discharge line, which goes from the condenser to the compressor. That's that one. I am missing the suction line, which goes from the compressor to the evaporator through the expansion valve, which is that guy right there. I was able to find one. None of my local stores have one in stock. It's a special order item. Rock Auto had them, but also Amazon. And the part number between Rock Auto and Amazon matched, but Amazon was slightly cheaper because I'm a Prime member, free shipping, by like $2, but would also get here faster. So I have that ordered. Then I have the liquid line. The liquid line goes from the expansion valve, the evaporator expansion valve, to the condenser. But in this case, it is stopped in the middle by the receiver drier. This hose goes from the evaporator to the receiver drier, and then there's another one that goes from the receiver drier back to the condenser. That is the hose that I am missing and is apparently discontinued, is no longer made. No one can find one. So, yeah, I'm pretty much going to have to reuse the one I've got, which makes me a little nervous because the last time I worked on an AC system, I ended up having to get several new parts because the threads between the aluminum and the steel had welded together, and every time I tried to undo some of those threads, they would strip. And so I ended up part by part having to go back to the parts store and getting a new part because I'd stripped threads from the hoses to the components. So I'm also slightly worried about that line having some of the R12 oil in it. So I'm going to have to find a way to clean that out really well. But now that I know, it's going to be a few days before that new hose gets here, so I'm not going to dive into this today. But what I am going to do is, for the components I've got, I'm going to double check that the fittings line up so that that's all ready to go. So last note on the AC upgrade for today. I noticed on the receiver dryer, all my fittings fit except this end that goes into the receiver dryer, or accumulator, depending on where you look it up. It's supposed to attach here, and I see on my old unit that there is some sort of adapter, so I'll see if I can reuse that. It appears to be brass, so I think it's reasonable that that will be reusable. The one other thing is right here there is a sensor or switch that also on my old receiver dryer. That is a high pressure switch, and it basically protects your AC system. If your refrigerant gets too low, it shuts the system down and prevents it from essentially burning up. I decided to order a new switch. Again, I found that on Amazon for like $7. That one was not expensive. So I've got a new one of those. So I should only be reusing one line, the one that I just can't find anywhere. This project's going to have to wait until then, and I'll bring you back. It is time to get back on the AC upgrade. I have all my parts except for the one hose that I told you I needed to order. It is on the way. It will be here tomorrow. So my goal tonight is to pretty much get all the new parts on except for that hose, which is easy access and I can do tomorrow. The hardest thing to access is the condenser, which is between the radiator and I believe the transmission cooler up here at front. And so to access that, you have to remove the radiator, and that's kind of the biggest part, and kind of the biggest pain, I dare say. So with that, that's what my objective is tonight, is to get that swapped out and then get this back together. So first thing to do is to drain the coolant. For that, I have this bucket and of course my replacement coolant. And I have picked up, because these Jeeps run hot, I do run 1 bottle of Royal Purple Ice, which is supposed to help keep the temperature under control. So I'll do that with the coolant. So I'm going to start by pulling the main coolant hose off of the bottom and drain it that way. The radiator does have a little petcock right there, but the first time I did this I found that was slow and messy because it drips out of that and pretty much goes all over this, and you never know where underneath here it's gonna really drip. So I'm going to use just that main line, which is going to be a lot faster. We are making good progress. I've got about half a tub full of coolant, and I've got a bunch of my front end cleared out here. So I'm down to my radiator, which does move. I hope it moves enough I can get the condenser out from behind it, because I really don't want to have to take this front off, but I'm not sure. Right now I'm switching gears just a little bit. I'm jumping over to the compressor. As a reminder, I replaced the evaporator core when I replaced the heater core. So this system is already evacuated. So I'm not letting any undue refrigerant into the atmosphere. So I'm going to try to take these 2 hoses off. And at that point, my compressor should be ready to come out. Of course, once I take out the proper bolts, which are lengthwise that way. I'm making pretty decent progress here. Compressor is out, as you can see, and I have the accumulator, receiver dryer, whatever you want to call it, loose. I've got the top hose off. Now the bottom hose, if you remember, is the one that I really need to reuse. So, and that I think needs to come out with the condenser. So I am to that point that I need to pull the condenser. Yep, I'll see what I have to do here and I'll let you know. While draining the coolant, I did take this top radiator hose off, and with that out of the way, I was able to lift this enough out of the way that I should be able to get this condenser out. So, but I think this only works if I can get these hoses disconnected, because otherwise I won't be able to like feed everything through. So yeah, if I can get those off, access from the top, and the other one I should be able to get right there. If I can get those off, then I am golden. I was able to get the condenser out. I obviously was not able to get the top hose off, but if you look at how crusty that is, that's not a big surprise. Fortunately, the bottom one, at least on the condenser side, was in good shape and came off easily. However, under the receiver dryer, it's looking a little bit rusty, so I do have some concerns about this side coming off. Let's see how we do. Success! It came off. I had to use a trick I learned a couple years ago. Watched a YouTube video about removing an exhaust manifold, and he talked about getting those bolts out, that you actually tighten just a little bit and then loosen, and then tighten a little bit and then loosen, tighten a little bit, and that allows some of the gunk to kind of have some place to go and move. So that's what I did, and this popped free. This is stuck, so I had to wind the whole cable off, but I've got something I can use. So before I can reuse this, I do need to clean it and get all the old R12 oil out so that it doesn't ruin my new system, but there is a way to do that. So according to the internet, the way to clean out AC liquid lines is to use a combination of water and bleach, or water and white vinegar, or soap and water in some suggestions. So I did the water and vinegar because I had some handy, and then I am aware that any moisture in your line is not good, so putting water in here seems a little counterproductive. I got my air compressor with a nozzle on it and sprayed down one end and ran air through this for a minute or two to try to get all that moisture out, and I'm convinced that whatever remains will be boiled out when I do the vacuum test to pressurize it when it's time to recharge. My first snag I've really run into so far on this project is when I put this liquid line on the bottom of the accumulator, it didn't line up. I was about 180 degrees off with I needed it like this, and it was the other way around. So I tried just tightening it all the way around and started to bend the little tube on the bottom. And then I decided to take a chance. Held on to it with some channel locks here and put my crescent wrench on the top, and I was able to free this up So now I can line this up properly and tighten it down. I could kind of twist the rubber part here to get it to line up, but that was twisting in a way that would be loosening this, and I was afraid with some pressure and some time that this was going to come loose. So I wasn't comfortable with that. So now my mind will be at ease. Alright, and now I've put my sensor on, snugged that down. This is snug. And so next step, I'm going to put this back in place. I'm going to hold off on this top hose until I've got some other things kind of put together. Again, that's easy access, so I can do that one from the top. So this is the first piece going back in. Receiver dryer is in place, and with that, I've installed a new O-ring on the liquid line, and that means it's time for the condenser and get the bottom hooked up. Bottom line is on and snug, which means I can put the condenser in its place, and I think even put the radiator back. I got a little ahead of myself. Can't put the radiator in quite yet. Got to do the upper hose first because you can't get to it with the radiator in the way. And these brackets don't come with any of the new stuff, so if you want to use those to keep your lines running nice and neat, you'll need to save those. And this first one is also behind the radiator, so to get that one on, you'll need the radiator still out of the way. So I need to tighten this upper line. It's just finger tight right now, and then get these brackets. One of them goes right here, and there's even a hole for the screw in the this bracket extending off of the condenser, and then one goes right here and one in the middle of those vertical lines there. So I will get those on and then put the radiator back in place. It's pushing midnight and I am tired and the neighborhood is asleep, and I want to get this buttoned up. So I got a little sidetracked with replacing my water pump. I had an aftermarket one lying around. I tried once before, and user error, it didn't work. And I've kept it for a time so I could put it back in. This was the time with everything off the front. So I did that, and then afterwards it was getting late and I just went in go mode and just kind of started throwing stuff back together. But it's mostly opposite of taking it apart. So I've got my new compressor in. My connections are there. Now I was worried about these two fittings, getting them in the wrong place. So I paid really close attention when I took the old one off to which one was like the high pressure side, the red. But it turns out as I put them on that they the tubes down here, how they connect, are a little bit different, so it's impossible to get these in the wrong place. Everything else is buttoned up. The last thing I have to do is replace these two hoses, which this one will be here tomorrow, so I can probably do that in the morning. This one is here, but I'm going to wait because they both go into the expansion valve back there, and that's the last thing in this box right here that I have to replace other than that new hose that's coming. So I'm going to clean up and call it a night, and tomorrow we'll do all those things, and hopefully tomorrow night I'll be able to hook up my new AC tools and get some vacuum and hopefully get the system charged and start getting some cool. Quick interjection here. While I was editing, it came to my attention that I had skipped some vital information, and so for the next portion of this to make sense, I need to give you some context. When I took off the fitting on the receiver dryer on the top, I found that the end that connects to the hose, the liquid line, was a male end, as was the liquid line. So I had two male ends, which don't work together for fittings. So I had to either look for a new fitting, which also had a valve in it, so that complicated that part of it, or find an adapter. Now back to the video. I've spent a good part of my day running around trying to solve this fitting problem, and I have solved it. It's not the ideal fix, but it will work. I went to several places, and unfortunately no one has a replacement for this because of the valve that is inside. And like I was experiencing, no one could find any information on what this is called even to look for. However, one place I did go did have the adapter. So this threads onto here, and in turn will thread onto this liquid line. So I would have preferred to get a whole new piece, but this is okay. This will work. I've got the room for it. So now I just need to figure out how to get this to fit tightly. Do I use a gasket? Do I use Teflon tape? Just to make sure there are no leaks. So I'm going to work on that for a minute, and with that I have all the parts I need to finish buttoning up this AC system. So the hardest thing at this point to replace is going to be the expansion valve, and I know that because I've had to take it off once before, and the only way we could get it off was my buddy Joe, who I often reference. We were doing it at his house, and he happened to have some crow's feet wrench heads, and so I have picked up a set of those a while back. They were on sale on Amazon, and thinking of that experience, I thought they might be handy. Problem is, I just have to find them. They are here somewhere. I know the general vicinity. The valve in here comes out quite easily. It came out in my hand earlier, and while I was out, one of the people carrying it around, it popped out on. And it's got a little bit of goop on it, which seems like presumably is R12 oil. So I need to get that off. So I'm going to go clean this the same way that I did the hose, the liquid line that I had to reuse. And I've also noticed right up here there is an O-ring on that side, which is the hose side. So I'll see if I can find a suitable replacement for that, and then we'll get to trying to deal with this guy. There was a little goop on both the valve and in the housing. Some brass brushes, this one and this one. Made quick work of it, getting that cleaned out with a little vinegar and water solution. And now to find a replacement for the O-ring, which split as I was trying to pull it out. There is a recess chamber in there that O-ring sits in. So yeah, I'll go see if I can find something that small. So here's where I'm at. I found some O-rings. These are too big to go inside that ring, where the old one, where this one came out of, and these ones are too small. And then there is one that also goes on the receiver dryer, which would be on this end of that fitting. Now that one's not a problem because I have that size. That is one of these that will fit fine. So what I think I'm going to do is, it works to take one of those fittings, those bigger ones, and put it on the inside of the adapter, which this goes into, and then it'll seal this end. Now that O-ring I checked does not seal the valve. The valve has its own seat in there, so I don't need it for that. So it's just to seal this connection. Now that leads me to another problem. I'm pretty sure that this line is like defective or something, because this end, it seems like it should spin so that it can feed into whatever, like these other ends do. But this one doesn't. It is like welded, brazed in place. So there is no turning this end. So in order to connect all of these, I'm going to have to put these on and then put this on by wrapping this hose around. Also, this doesn't seat very far into this other end, and so I need to, there's no way a gasket is going to seal that. So I looked up on the interwebs about whether to use a sealant or a Teflon tape, and something very compelling someone posted was that Teflon tape is not a sealant. It is more of a lube, and it helps keep your threads from getting galled and seizing. So a true sealant is going to be this liquid form. So I'm going to have to use this to and cross my fingers that this will seal those threads, because they only go down maybe like a third of the way into this portion. Or actually, I guess it's this side. Let's see if we can get to that point. If I can get this hose on with these connections, then the rest should be pretty easy. Crow's foot did the trick. 3/4 inch. Expansion valve is out. I believe we replaced those O-rings when we did the heater core and evaporator, but I will replace them again anyway, just because they look like they have some old oil on them. I'm going to go ahead and put the new expansion valve on and then get to the problem with the liquid line. O-rings are replaced and fittings are wiped down. Time to put the expansion valve on. Now this expansion valve is directional, and because I've already test fit my lines, I know which direction is which. This face goes towards the front. This one goes towards the cab, and the one that really is distinctive is the bottom one here. You can see the pin on one side, whereas it's a shield on the other. So this is the direction that it needs to go on. I went to put my expansion valve on and observed one of my O-rings was missing. Came off when I was wiping down the fittings. So fortunately I located it. Even if not, I had plenty of spares. But yeah, it pays to kind of double check, make sure that everything is in its place so we don't have leaks in the system. Success! Fortunately, this is a pretty pliable line, so I also have the room, I was able to spin that around and get it on. So now the final hookups to the expansion valve. At last, I am entirely hooked up. I've got my expansion valve, my suction, and liquid lines. I have one mild concern, and that is that this suction line has a little bit of a kink in 2 places. So I'll just have to see how that goes. Maybe I can bend this a little bit if that tends to be a problem. I don't know yet. But my system is all back together. So at this point, the thing to do is put a vacuum to it. I'm going to film that, doing the vacuum and charging the system separately, but lots of other people have done that, and I don't know that I bring anything new to that conversation. If you're interested in seeing how it goes, just to see the result, put a comment down below, and if I get enough people interested, I will post that video. But otherwise, I'm going to wrap this one up here because it's probably on the long side at this point, and we're pretty much there. So, thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one.